Hey everybody, Brett from AstartesGaming here, back with some more Mount Blade 2 Bannerlord developer blog coverage. Today we're going to be looking at the dev blog for September 21st, 2017, which is titled Modding in Bannerlord. So last week they promised us something a little bit different. They weren't going to give us a Q&A, or at least not one with a particular member of the development team. This is still a Q&A, but it is basically a bunch of questions that have been constantly asked in the forums, and so I believe the community manager has basically gone through and with the help of the development team answered as many of them as they can. So let's jump right in. Of course, we've got a little introduction here, basically just saying modding is an important part of the Mountain Blade community. They're always impressed with like the range of mods that people have come up with, like Diplomacy, Brittenwalda, Prophecy of Pendor. They were so impressed with Brittenwalda that they actually hired that development team to make Viking Conquest. They also mentioned Persistent World, which, if you're not familiar with Persistent World, it's sort of like it's the closest thing you could get to like an MMO in Warband. Basically, it is, rather than having like an overland map, everybody is on like one really large and diverse battle map, and you can go to different parts. There's like taverns on it and things. Very popular on multiplayer servers, obviously. Anywho, so let's get into the questions. There's 35 in total, so this is going to be a long video. I'll comment on some of them, but I'm not going to comment on all of them just because it would take too long. So what language will they be using? They're using C#, obviously. Well, actually, the important thing is data files are formatted in XML. In Warband, we had Python as the scripting language, and most, if not all, of the data files were just basic, like text files. So it looks like they've definitely like modernized their process here. Okay, so which IDE will have support like Visual Studio Express from Tailworlds? This is integrated development environment, I believe, and an example, being Visual Studio. Basically, like tools that you can use to work on various things in the development process. If you were, trying to make a mod from scratch, for example. So you can use any version of Visual Studio 2015. Let me make sure you guys can see that. So you can use any version of Visual Studio 2015. For example, the Community Edition, but any version of that particular program. So can you provide us with screenshots and or a list and description of the various tools that you use and that may be made available to modders? So this is really cool because we get to some idea of the tools that we might have access to here. We have scene editors, which is going to be scenes are like the battle maps, essentially. When you go into, say, like a village in Warband and you walk around the village, that is a scene. When you walk around a town, that is a scene. When you go into a tavern, that is a scene. So that's what the scene editor allows you to do. It allows you to make those various things, so you could design a village layout, or say like the interior of a tavern or a castle or something. Mesh editor, which is going to be for your player models, armors, things like that, weapons. Material editors, it's going to be the textures, whether they be like the specular maps, the normal maps, the diffuse maps for whatever you're applying texture-wise onto the meshes. That's going to be in your material editor. Model and animation viewer. I imagine that's going to be working closely with the mesh editor, but this will allow you to either make new animations or preview your new meshes in various animations. We have the skeleton editor, which is again going to work closely with the animation viewer. Is this actually that's the cloth editor? Never mind. So it'll allow you to make new skeletons or whatever, and then you can of course animate those and so on. So trying to think of an example of this. There's a few mods that add new skeletons and animations. I'm trying to think of one. I think Rome at War does this a little bit. There's a lot of animations in that particular mod that you don't see in any others that I'm aware of. Mostly with the various spears, because that one is very, you know, like centered around like ancient Rome and Greece, and so the spear and the pike or the sarissa was a big deal in that mod, and so you know they had to sort of beef up those weapons in order to make them viable, and so they've given them, you know, faster animations and better animations and whatnot to help with that. Replay editor, this is really cool because if you guys are familiar with like Grand Theft Auto 5's Rockstar editor, a lot of games are doing this now. Blood Bowl 2 is doing it as well. You can view replays of your gameplay, and they allow you to sort of view it from any camera angle. It's not just a literal, like for example, when I record gameplay, I'm just recording it from my point of view because the screen capture software is literally just capturing my screen. Whereas a replay editor is basically sort of like replaying what you've played, if that makes any sense. So you can change the camera angles. You can sort of see everything that's happening from every angle. It's re-rendering it, essentially. And so there's a couple of channels that do this with the Rockstar editor in Grand Theft Auto 5. But you'll see them playing, and it looks very cinematic because they're actually going back and taking the footage that they played and going to the Rockstar editor, changing camera angles constantly, using like the cinematic camera angles, occasionally jumping into first person. But things that you probably couldn't do while you were playing on the fly. It would just be too difficult to worry about that and play the game. So this is really cool because it allows you to go back in and, you know, do some cinematic stuff without having to worry about like setting it up before you do it. You can just take care of it after the fact. Particle editors, so like explosions and whatnot. Atmosphere editors. I'm not sure exactly what's going to fall into that. Cloth editor is what we're seeing here. But I imagine that is going to be similar to the material editor. Path editor, I think that's going to be for like AI nav meshing and stuff like that. And then we have a resource browser. Okay, and then also the runtime performance profile tools that we use will be available for modders. They will be able to check the performance impact of their changes. That's handy because there's a lot of mods I've played lately that just run like absolute garbage. They're fantastic mods, but they've basically pushed the Warband engine further than it was intended to, and so it doesn't perform very well when you try to like speed or fast forward through the game. It hangs or crashes. And there's quite a few mods like this that I've experienced, so it's cool for them to be able to actually like see, you know, like, okay, if we do this, how much is it going to impact the frame rate, or, you know, what have you. Okay, so will modding tools be made available prior to release and or as part of early access? They're not decided. I can't imagine that they would. To me, this seems like a stupid question because obviously the game is first priority. Modding is important in Mount & Blade, but doesn't really matter if the game's not done yet, you know? So why they would prioritize putting out modding tools before the game's even finished, I can't imagine. So I'm surprised they didn't just flat out say no. And I'm surprised they even bothered to address that question. So will we have a Tailworlds developer working with the community to support modding, learning tools, tutorial feedback, etc. And they say that they are going to share a documentation site and are planning to make some tutorial videos. Also, they will be taking feedback and engaging with users on the forums. So they're going to support the modding community, not just with the actual tools, but they're going to show us how to use them. They'll take our feedback in regard to how well those tools work, or maybe like how to improve those tools, or maybe other tools we might need, stuff like that. With Warband, the list of hard-coded features lessened as time progressed. Will this be the same for Bannerlord as you decide over time what should and shouldn't be hard-coded? And they say most probably. So what they're saying here is, initially with Warband, a lot of stuff was hard-coded, And if something is hard-coded, it means that modders can't change it. So essentially that part of the game is like locked off to modders. And as as Warband went on, they hard-coded less and less so that modders could dig deeper and deeper into the game. And they're saying that it's going to be probably the same thing with Bannerlord. They're initially going to have a bit of hard-coded stuff, and then when they see like what modders are going to need to change to do certain things, or what things may not necessarily need to be hard-coded, they can go back and change that so that modders can sink their teeth deeper into the game. Will there be an in-game engine tool camera to create FMV sequences? And they are saying that yes, they have the replay editor, which we already discussed up there. Will we be able to launch select several mods like Elder Scrolls games, or will it be a one module at a time thing like Warband? This game will be will support multiple mods at the same time. So this has already been addressed. I'm not sure. I guess they're just trying to sort of consolidate all this information in one place, but this has been addressed a long time ago, and I've made videos on this like a year ago, if not longer than that. But so the way that mods are going to work for Bannerlord is completely different than the way they work for Warband. Essentially, with Warband, you were basically downloading a different version of the game, and then you had to launch that different version of the game. And whatever that version had is what you got. You couldn't really add anything else to it. So if you wanted to play a certain mod, like, I'm trying to think of examples here. I might mix this up, but like if you wanted to play Prophecy of Pendor, for example, but you also wanted like Diplomacy and Freelancer. I don't remember if Prophecy of Pendor has those already, but if it did, then great. If it didn't, then too bad, you can't really add those in after the fact. Or vice versa, if you wanted to play Prophecy of Pendor but you didn't want those, well, too bad, you're stuck with them. So with this new modding system, you would have, say, Prophecy of Pendor, which is like your overhaul mod, and then you would have other like utility mods like Diplomacy, for example, and that would only affect the scripts and dialogues for dealing with different lords, different factions, things like that. And Prophecy of Pendor would only change the world map, the factions, the troops, things like that. So basically everything is going to be sort of self-contained to where it's going to change certain things but not others, and then you download other mods to change the other things that you want. Everything will have its own little job rather than everything being a complete overhaul that you have to basically choose all or nothing for. And I did a whole video on this if you guys want to check that out. So let's see. How will texture folder structure be handled? Is it still a single folder like in Warband with all the textures placed together, or will it have subfolders for things like ground textures, armors, and such? And if so, will the subfolders name and structures be moddable? They say that you can use any number of folders for resources, but it is a flat system, so they don't support subfolders within folders. I don't know why this is a big deal. Warband is just fine with one big folder. Some modders definitely struggle with this because if you guys watch my Warband series, like any of them, you know that I tend to do a lot of modding of the mods for my own purposes. And so I'm constantly digging around in these files, and I can tell you that a lot of modders have no idea how to organize things. For example, A Clash of Kings, the modder just has no fucking clue how to organize things logically. Some modders do. For example, I've dug around in the Brittenwalda mod, and that one, despite not being in English, a lot of the like resource files and stuff are actually named in different language. I think it's Spanish. I think they were from Spain, but I can still navigate that one fine despite not speaking that language because it's still organized intelligently. In A Clash of Kings, it's all in English, but I have no clue where anything is most of the time because a lot of it is taken from other mods and not renamed to organize it with the stuff that's already there. So it's pretty much just a giant shit show of stuff from all over the place. And yeah, so some people obviously really struggle with this and some don't. But if you name files and, you know, images and things intelligently, then this really isn't a problem. It's not a big deal. You don't need subfolders. Just be smart with how you name and organize things. So how is the code split between hard-coded engine and mod sys or open to the modding community? What level of access do we have to the game UI code, AI, etc.? Could you provide us with an example of what will likely remain hard-coded? So unlike Warband, the vanilla game scripts will not be directly modifiable by modders. However, it will be possible for modders to add new scripts as plugins and also have modifications for XML data files. In Warband, we had the problem that whenever we released a new version or patch, almost all existing mods would immediately become incompatible with the new version, and modders had to go through the lengthy process of reapplying their changes on the new version's scripts. Moreover, it was impossible for players to run multiple mods in conjunction, so the new system will make modders' lives much easier and also support multiple mods. By changing, well, let me address that first. So what they're saying here is like the base scripts. For example, if you wanted to edit a script for Warband, so the best example I can think of this is in my Kingdom mod Let's Play. It's basically just native, but with new weapons and armor. And I noticed that the cattle are like the old native cattle that don't follow you. You have to like push them around. And I didn't like that. So I wanted to go into the scripts and change it. And all I had to do was open up the like scripts.txt file and find the string associated with that and then change the numbers so that they followed me. Basically, you change it to like, I think the behavior is like a number from like 1 to 10, like 1 being like lord parties, 2 being like merchant caravans, and so on and so on. So you basically just change that one number in the scripts thing, and then you save your scripts file, and it's changed. What they're saying here is that you won't necessarily be able to do that. What you'll do is you will basically write a script that will sort of override the old one, because on the old system, say I make that change and then somebody or you know the developers update Warband, and that script.txt will no longer work because my changes weren't compatible with whatever they updated. So with this one, the change is going to be separate from the actual script, and that way whatever they do to the script, your change is still independent of that and just sort of on top of it, and that way you won't have to worry about constantly updating mods every time the game updates, which is good. I think it's going to be a little bit more work because again, it's not just changing one number in the script, it's writing a new script to sort of override that part of the old one. However, it does save you time in other ways, so I think it's a positive trade-off, although it might make simple changes a little bit more difficult initially. So by changing XML files, it will be possible to modify or add, delete most types of game objects such as items, characters, factions, etc. Of course, it will also be possible to add new assets such as meshes or textures. Modders will be able to add new campaign behaviors, mission behaviors, and quests. Campaign behaviors are executed while the player is spending time on the campaign map, whereas mission behaviors are executed when the player is in a scene. For example, if you want to create some extra bandit parties every few days, you can do that with a campaign behavior. Modders will also be able to change most of the formulas used in the game. For example, if you want to add a special item that makes you move faster on map, you will add the item through an XML file, and also modify the formula for campaign map speed so that it returns a higher number if a party is in possession of the said item. And modders who want to change an existing behavior, like party members deserting when morale is low, will have two options. Either they will modify the default formula, or if that's not adequate for some reason, they will be able to disable the default behavior entirely and add a new one from scratch. So basically you can make a script that modifies the existing script, or you can make a script that nullifies the existing script and then a new script that does essentially the same thing but in a different manner, more like you want it to. So that was a really long question. Let's move on to the next one. Will we be able to seed a randomized number? Yeah, you can do random number generators in your scripts. Not too important for most of us, but for people doing extensive modding, this is a big deal. So how has the dialogue system been improved? Is the dialogue system dynamic? Not really a modding question, but interesting nonetheless. There's a very powerful string processing system. You can pretty much embed programs into the string itself. Dialogues, game menus, and everything text related can make use of that. Cool, so it's apparently like very powerful. How many factions can this system support? I think I'm scrolling too high for you guys. Let me leave it about here so you can see. So how many factions can this system support? Are there easy mechanisms to create and modify factions? You can add as many factions as you'd like. Technically, creating factions is just a method call, but of course making them interesting would be the hard part. So adding a faction is actually very quick and easy. It's the adding of like troops and unique armor and, you know, things like that that's difficult making the faction. And there's apparently no upper limit. It's just a matter of like how many different parties running around on the map can your computer handle. So will Battlefield AI, both troop AI and strategic AI, be accessible or hard-coded? And they're saying that lowest level troop AI is hard-coded, so not accessible, but you can customize it somewhat by changing aggressiveness, maximum speed, etc. You can also give AI target movement points. Formation AI and overall battle AI is extendable, and modders can add new tactics and AI behaviors. So the basic, just like minimal AI is hard-coded, but everything beyond that you can tweak. That includes like adding new formations or maybe even how they behave within said formations. Again, aggressiveness, maximum speed, all sorts of things. You can give them target movement points, meaning you can tell them to like always look for high ground, or, you know, if they're cavalry based, maybe tell them to like always search for like an open field area. Anywho, let's keep moving because there's still quite a few questions left. Will troop and party pathfinding AI be accessible or hard-coded? Pathfinding will be hard-coded. You can turn faces on or off in a navigation mesh, though, so there are ways to control pathfinding behavior. Nav meshing is basically just like giving the it's hard to explain, like the terrain, essentially like places for the AI to walk. So you could basically turn them off in certain areas so the AI is like, okay, I can't go that way. Even though the player might be able to, like, you know, worm their way through there, the AI won't touch it because it's not nav meshed. So there are ways to do it. However, pathfinding is hard-coded. All right, so scene. Oh, this is the scene editor. Actually, I don't think you guys can see that, so I won't click on it. Did that open in a new tab? Damn it. Okay, well, I don't know if you could see that or not, but let's go down to here. Assuming that the AI takes into account terrain, we'll be able to translate this understanding of the battle scene into a graphical representation. In other words, while you decided against a minimap, that's something that I wasn't aware of, but apparently some people were. There's not going to be a minimap in Bannerlord. Not really something that bothers me, but I'm sure it will bother some people. I don't use it very often in Warband, but I know a lot of people that use it all the time. But not a big deal to me. I'm sure it will be to some, though. Do you intend to provide us with a framework and/or operations that will enable us to generate a simplified visual representation of unit locations, terrain details, and possibly even AI strategy? It will be possible to draw graphical primitives on screen. Also, one can render multiple scenes on screen for other uses. So you could mod in a minimap, essentially. They're not going to put one in, but you could do that yourself. Apparently you can render multiple scenes. That could mean a whole number of things. And they're saying that, yeah, as long as like the mini map or whatever is lightweight enough, it's not going to affect performance in any way. So that's good to know. Will there be greater control over the core variables and booleans of the core combat mechanic? For example, will we be able to directly edit the code used for horse charge damage, hit detection, AI movement, and so on? Certain variables will be possible to change, but lots of constants may remain hard-coded. I don't like a lot of this stuff. I don't think is really necessary. There's apparently people that really want to dig into this game and change like every little thing. most modding is just going to be adding, you know, equipment, maybe changing scenes, rearranging maps, making new maps, things like that. Completely overhauling combat seems like it would be a lot of work, and maybe not even necessary. Like, we haven't even played the game yet, so until I get my hands on the combat, I don't want to necessarily judge, but I imagine that the combat is going to be sufficient for whatever mod you're trying to do. But I guess it's good to know that at least certain variables will be changeable. Will it be possible to alter where the AI aims with ranged weapons? And they just say you can give them an entity to target. Again, I don't know where people are going with some of this stuff. So it's possible to combine. Is it possible to combine designed elements with procedurally generated elements into the same scene? They say, of course, script components can be used to add, alter, or remove stuff from the scene. Materials, other scripts, physics, and polygon attributes can be changed at runtime. So an example of this that I've seen from them is, for example, a village scene can essentially have like 4 or 5 different versions, or however many versions really. Like you could have a winter version, you could have a regular version, like a fall, a spring. So basically like seasonal versions. You could also have like an under attack version. If bandits were taking up, you know, residence in there and you had to clear them out, there would be like maybe a more beat up version of the map for that. And then, you know, the regular one, and you could potentially have like that bandit version in each season as well. So you could have like bandits in winter, you know, bandits in autumn, and you would use scripts to essentially call those. So like, is it winter, is it snowing, and then it calls the winter scene. Or like, are there bandits present, and then it calls the bandit one. Or you could combine those. But yeah, you can essentially have like a huge number of scenes within a single scene, and have scripts basically decide which versions you're going to be seeing, or which combination of versions you're going to be seeing. Alright, how does AI pathfinding work? Will sceners have to create AI meshes for their scenes? It says that yes, scene makers will need to create navigation meshes. The scene editor has a tool to create the nav mesh automatically, but the results vary, and we generally prefer to create them manually. That's cool that they can do it automatically. I imagine it would be a bit wonky though. That's usually something that, you know, needs a person to kind of look at and figure out. But yeah, that's cool. So we have the ability to do all that. Is there an inbuilt method to voxelize the scene in order to use cheap ray tracing for global illumination? No. Again, I don't know what... For those of you who don't know, voxels are like... If you ever played like Minecraft or Terraria or any game like that where you can sort of like chip away at the world, whether they be like blocks or little like nodes, those are voxels. And so why you would want to like voxelize Bannerlord, I don't know. And then he gets into like stuff that I'm not super familiar with, like ray tracing, global illumination. But I mean, this is, you know, Bannerlord, not like Minecraft or, you know, any game like that where you're literally like digging holes into the earth and like, you know, crafting. There is a little bit of crafting in this, but not to that level. So are seasonal effects generated, or will they have to be manually added? Will it be possible to preview them in the editor? And they say that you can definitely preview what the scene will look like in different seasons and different atmosphere settings in the editor. You can set alternative terrain, materials, and alternative foliage for different seasons. It's all very customizable. It's something we just talked about. And it sounds like the scene tool actually be able to do some of that work for you. So each seasonal one, you know, you might be able to basically just have the editor add snow for you, for example, or add fallen leaves, depending on the scene. But it sounds like the tools are going to be pretty robust. Will it be possible to make caves or tunnels in the map or scene editor? Will it be possible to alter terrain during play? And or will modders have the tools to enable alter such functionality? So what they're saying is that tunnels and caves need meshes. The terrain system does not support them. So essentially, you would have to have the terrain and then like make a mesh for a cave that sits on top of the terrain. It couldn't be part of the terrain itself. It's not supported to have like a hole in the terrain that people can actually navigate. We do not currently support dynamic changes to terrain height maps during the game. Yeah, I couldn't imagine them doing that. That would be really hard. It is possible in Warband actually, but you know, it's because Warband's map is extremely simplified. And actually, no, I don't think it is possible on Warband other than on the Overland map. If you go into edit mode, there is like a terrain function that you can mess with, but I think it's only for the Overland map. I don't mess with it personally. But yeah, I mean, like messing with terrain while you're in the game, I imagine that would be very difficult. So what is the biggest scene the editor can handle? They say it depends on the computer and how much RAM is available. Their typical scenes are not too large because they wanted them to load quickly and not take excessive amounts of hard drive space. They experimented with larger scenes on a few occasions, but it's not something that's a priority to them. They didn't really answer that question. So do you think the level editor will support multi-user working, cooperative scening over a server? And they say no, it doesn't support that. So these are like people that are trying to like develop maybe bigger mods and working together online. I mean, again, not something that I think is super important to a lot of people at all. Certainly not anybody that's not doing extensive modding, and probably not a priority for the developers either. You know, they're probably more concerned with like multiplayer server stuff and not necessarily like whether or not their modding tools will be able to work, you know, together on over a server. So yeah, again, some of these questions I think are a little bit unrealistic. How will movable scene props or objects be handled? Will they meet the same limitations as they currently have in Warband? So the physics objects for dynamic rigid bodies will have some polygon count restrictions. And yeah, that's not surprising. I don't see why they wouldn't. I imagine the limitations aren't going to be the same as Warband because obviously the Warband engine is far inferior to the Bannerlord engine, but they are going to have limitations because if they didn't, then, you know, you could have physics-based objects with ridiculous poly counts that would just lag the shit out of your game because there's so much for the engine to account for. So yeah, restrictions, obviously. Will we be able to simulate the flow of time in a scene without forcing a re-entry? And the short answer is no. The atmosphere system does not, or is not designed to update in real time. Basically, this goes back to those scene things. The scenes can't really update with you in them. Essentially, you know, in Warband, when time passes, you don't stay in the scene and the sky changes from like light to dark. It kicks you back out to the overland map and then you go back in and it's nighttime now. They're saying it's basically the same thing here. However, there's ways around that. Rather than booting the player back out to the overland map, they can do like a fade to black and have it fade back in. So essentially you are leaving and coming back, but to the player you're not really leaving. So there are ways around it, but it's the same system as Warband. Just with more, you know, loopholes, I guess. So how will scene files be organized and managed in Bannerlord? Will terrain codes and scene prop files remain separated? Some of these people are really concerned with like file organization. I just don't get it. We divided scene files into two groups. One is the editable data for the scene editor, and the other is loading time optimized binary files. Okay. I'm sure that's important to somebody, but I don't really... doesn't strike a chord with me. Is armor created the same way as you've shown weapons to be created? This is an obvious no. We've known this for a long time. Crafting system is only works for melee weapons. That's not entirely true, actually. I'm pretty sure that there are throwing weapons that can be crafted as well. At least last time they showed it, I'm pretty sure javelins were one of the things that you could customize. Because you could, I remember seeing some that you could make look like harpoons and whatnot. But, yeah, so only for certain types of weapons, armor, shields, bows, and crossbows cannot be crafted. And we've known that for basically ever, since they've shown the crafting system, essentially. So if you didn't know, there you go. But for the rest of us, yeah, not anything new there. Alright, does this mean that creation of arms and armor are now internal to the game superstructure? And if so, does this support independent artists from adding their own weapons and armor to the game? And the answer here is yes, you can still add stuff if it is a crafted thing. So like, for example, a 4-piece sword with a blade, the crossguard, the handle, and the pommel are all different pieces. You can still do that. And then you basically you use a script within an XML file to associate them. Or if it's just a set of armor, then you would add it just like any other single item. So it basically works exactly as you'd expect. Will we be able to add customized skeletons and new bones? If yes, it would be able to support static object bones for real-time animations. Yeah, of course you can. We have a skeleton editor and we have a mesh editor, so why couldn't you make those things with either of them? So any information on model dimensions or poly count? Poly count is varied, but we use LOD meshes heavily. Yeah, like I really want to know where some of these questions came from. Like, are they going to give you the poly count on every single mesh in the game? I don't know what you were expecting for an answer there. Because obviously certain things are going to be very high poly and certain things are going to be very low poly. But just like in Warband, they use LOD or level of detail meshes. So when a person is standing within like 100 meters of you, they are going to be like fully rendered basically. And then when they go to 200 meters, they're going to be partially rendered. I'm saying partially rendered, but essentially they're just switched to a lower level of detail mesh. So like the armor is going to be super high detail, high poly count, and then the next level is like a lower poly count, and then I think in Warband there's usually 4 levels of detail, and if you go into like OpenBRF you can look at them, but essentially they're just lowering the poly count for people that are further and further away, so that there's still like a vague shape of a human out there, or whatever it is, a tree, a castle. There's still that vague shape. However, it's not wasting a bunch of time rendering high detail on those characters because you couldn't see it at that distance anyway. So any information on average texture size? Will 4K be supported? So average texture size is 2K, so HD, but there is 4K support. It's just not in the game. So you can add 4K textures for all your mod creations. You can have a fully 4K mod. There's just no actual 4K textures in the game. The game engine will support them though. Will every piece of equipment have physics options like tassels and cloth, including weapons? Not every piece probably, but modders can add it to all types of equipment. Weapons can have them as cosmetic only, so no flails with cloth system. That's unfortunate. Flails would be awesome, but I understand why. I mean, it would be a nightmare trying to render physics for one flail on a battlefield, let alone like an army of them. But that's good to know. So you can have like little chains dangling off your swords and things like that. That would be really cool. On like helmets, the little plumes on top or tassels can actually be rendered using the physics engine. So they're not just like a static piece of the helmet anymore. They're actually like a little cloth thing hanging off the top. Will we have access to shader source files? They haven't decided yet. I would imagine not, but you never know. What level of moddability can we expect for the new PBR engine? PBR relies less on the shaders and textures themselves and more on the sky maps, screen space, post effects, and the location and detail of lights. Can we expect to be able to implement dynamic GI? For example, can we expect GI and SSR at all? So we have good variety of post effects, and you can probably add new post effects. We have SSR. It should be possible to add dynamic GI in theory, but in practice it can be very hard or even impossible. So again, people like really looking to tweak the game engine here. It sounds like everything is at least technically possible. Whether or not it is realistic is probably a different story, because it could take you, you know, really long time to implement it, or it could be really difficult. But it is in theory possible. Can we force certain body parts or bones to play specific animations and apply ragdoll physics on them? Useful to simulate various injuries. They say no, it doesn't. The engine doesn't support that. And I don't know any engine that supports like ragdoll physics on a single limb. If you guys know of an engine that does, let me know in the comments. But I can't think of a single game engine where you can literally only simulate ragdoll physics on a single limb. Usually it's the entire body or nothing. So somebody dies and they go ragdoll. But I've never seen like somebody shot in the leg and their leg goes ragdoll, for example. Like you can. That isn't to say that you can't have certain body parts play specific animations. I don't think what they meant by sorry it doesn't support that is the applying ragdoll physics on them is what I would expect, because there are plenty of game engines that you can, you know, force certain body parts to play specific animations. For example, even in Mount & Blade Warband, when you swing the sword, you know, your right arm, well, actually no, because that's technically a full body animation. It's just that the right arm is doing the most actual movement. So maybe they don't support individual animations for certain things. I can't imagine them, like, definitely not the ragdoll physics on a single limb, but allowing certain body parts to play certain animations. Maybe certain like really modern engines. I have seen older engines that sort of like feigned doing this. Basically, they would have a full body animation that looked a lot like the previous one, but with a slight change to where it looked like it was a single. For example, I think it was some old like Half-Life mods where you could take limb damage, and if you got shot in like the right leg, for example, your character's posture would change and they would sort of drag that leg behind them. But all they were doing was changing the full body animation to sort of like have that right leg injury. It's not just the animation playing on the right leg, it's just a different version of the full body animation. So maybe that's what they're doing here. They probably won't have that level of detail, but I don't know. Until we have the game, there's no way I could know. So what modeling or viewing programs will or should be used for Bannerlord? So like 3ds Max, Maya, Blender, and apparently they will document workflows for these. So they will, you know, that documentation thing they were talking about for modders, they're going to show you essentially how to use those programs to get stuff into the game. We also use a ton of other tools for sculpting, painting, textures, viewing, etc. Okay, so they use a variety of stuff, basically. What tools supporting animation campaign map icons? Or what tools support animating them? We have some script components which can add simple looping animations to entities in any scene. It is not as complicated as the animation system of characters and paddles. So I assume what they're talking about here is like the little, I want to call them sprites, but I don't think they're technically sprites. Your representation on the campaign map, the little guy riding the horse with the banner, they aren't animated in the same way that the actual characters are. They're basically just like a looped running animation and like a looped flag blowing in the wind animation. And you can add, you know, other simple looping animations to those if you wanted to change them. However, you know, you can't have them doing the variety of things that the actual characters can. And that's the last question. And boy, is my throat raw after reading all those. So hopefully you guys found this interesting. The length of this video is going to be ridiculous. But, yeah. So if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. I will do my best to answer them. I am obviously not a developer at Tailworld, so I have no like insider information here. But I do mod Warband quite often, and I mod other games pretty often as well. So I'm familiar with a lot of modding mechanics. If you guys have any like specific questions on that. My biggest concern is that the new modding systems for Bannerlord while more streamlined and more effective and everything, might be a little bit too involved for the layman out there like me. I am not a programmer. I don't know any scripting language fully. I know bits and pieces of certain ones. For example, I think Arma 3 is written mostly in Java, and so I've become a little bit familiar with JavaScript, or at least certain parts, just because I work on certain things in Arma 3 scripts all the time. Or, in Warband, well, no, in Warband I use a lot of modding tools, so I honestly have not become that familiar with Python despite playing with it pretty often. But yeah, my biggest concern is that it's going to be a little bit too complex for people like me, essentially, that aren't programmers, that just like to kind of fumble around in the game files. But hopefully not. Hopefully we get a nice, robust set of tools that will allow us to do these things without having like a ton of programming experience. But anyways, this video is like almost an hour long now, so I'm going to end it here. Again, if you guys have any questions or comments, let me know below. But thank you so much for watching. I had a great time talking about some Bannerlord with you, and I look forward to seeing you guys back here for the next devlog video.